Hey, it's Rick Kettner here. Let's discuss the most powerful marketing strategy and 6 unique ways to make better use of it in your business. This is tip number 13 in my 21 marketing tips from 21 years in the field video series. The single most effective way to promote almost anything is through word of mouth referral. That is, having other people recommend or share whatever it is that you offer, including products, services, or even just ideas. Not only is word of mouth highly effective, but it's also infinitely scalable and something that's built right into human nature. We love to recommend things to people that we care about, and we also love to get recommendations from other people that we know and trust. In his book, Marketing 4.0, Philip Kotler explains that as people become more and more skeptical about brand messages and advertisements, they're relying more and more on what he calls the F factor. Friends, family, fans, and followers. These are the people we influence and that tend to influence us when it comes to making a purchase, trying a new service, or considering a new idea. And it's worth noting that recommendations between these groups are not only more targeted and relevant, but they're also more persuasive than other forms of marketing, including paid advertising and product placement. Let me give you a quick example. A few weeks ago, I was in my local bookstore browsing the business section, and I noticed a new book that I'd never seen before. There were a bunch of copies, so I assumed it must be popular, or maybe it was just in demand at the moment. I picked it up, I scanned the back. Even though it seemed interesting, I ended up putting it back on the shelf because it just didn't seem like the right fit for me at the time. And this kind of thing happens all the time, and it rarely results or ends up in a purchase. But a week or two later, one of my brothers just happened to mention that he read the exact same book and thought I might like it. So I immediately ordered a copy, and not because I was close to buying it anyway, because honestly, I had completely moved on. But his recommendation gave me total confidence that I would enjoy the book. He knows what I like, he'd read it himself, and I trust his recommendation. And this kind of thing happens all the time, often without me having any knowledge about the product beforehand. This is the power of word of mouth referral. It can cause us to take immediate action unlike almost anything else. It's more targeted, more relevant, and more persuasive. Now, when it comes to marketing in business and trying to make your own products and services more shareable or referable, one of the most important things that you can do is study the science of how ideas spread. One of my favorite books on the subject is Contagious by Jonah Berger. It covers the 6 principles of contagiousness, which include social currency, triggers, emotions, public observability, practical value, and stories. Let's dive into each one of these in a little more detail so you can see how they might be applied to your business, starting with social currency. People share things that make themselves look good to others, things that make them seem entertaining rather than boring, or smart rather than dumb. So the key here is to help people look good when recommending your products or ideas. What's in it for them? Why should they share your product or idea? How will it make them look smart or interesting? Sometimes this comes down to just making a really great product, but often it's about sharing something novel, surprising, or just interesting about how it works or what it does. Is there something remarkable about your product? How is it better or different than alternative solutions? Can you share a surprising or interesting fact about it? At the end of the day, you need to give people a reason to share, and often this comes down to making them look smart, helpful, or interesting when they talk about what you offer. Next up, we have triggers. Triggers are any kind of stimuli that prompt people to think about related things in a given moment. They boost word of mouth by making a product, topic, or idea top of mind. For example, I use a team collaboration tool called Monday. The name itself is anchored to a trigger that I naturally experience each and every week. And so I'm reminded of the app merely by having a recurring trigger. But more important than just the name alone is the context in which I use the product. Monday is the day when I review my plans for the next week and set short-term goals. So now, at the exact time when I could most benefit from my project management tool, I have a naturally occurring trigger based on the context of the activity. Podcasts often apply the same idea by using words like coffee or commute in their titles, such as comments over coffee, because this can trigger someone to think about their podcast at the specific time when they're available to listen, such as when they're having their coffee. So ask yourself, what environmental triggers could you associate with your product or service? What natural stimuli could you use to remind people of your product? You don't have to incorporate the trigger into the name itself, but you should seek to create a natural link or association between it and your product. For example, ads that show a Kit Kat bar being consumed with coffee or ads that show Oreos being consumed with milk can both cause customers to link the product with a naturally recurring trigger. Next up, we have emotions. Things are naturally contagious when they evoke some kind of emotion. So rather than obsessing about features or facts, we need to focus on feelings. And not just any feelings, but those that are most likely to motivate people to take action. This isn't about positive or negative emotions, but rather, as Jonah Berger and his team discovered, it's about the level of physiological arousal of a given emotion. Positive high arousal emotions include feelings of awe, excitement, and amusement. Negative high arousal emotions include anger, and anxiety. Now, it's worth noting, even though negative emotions can be very powerful, especially in politics and other polarizing situations, it's generally best for businesses to focus on positive emotions. So ask yourself, does your product or idea generate awe, excitement, or amusement? And if so, how can you amplify or enhance the experience for customers so they're more likely to share it with others? Next up, we have public observability. This is one of my favorites. When we see others doing something, it makes it more likely that we will do it ourselves. That's because we often assume if other people are doing something, it must be a good idea. And the more often we see people doing it, the more we're convinced of this. Another name for this principle is social proof, as described in Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini, a very popular marketing book, first published back in 1984. The idea here is that we look to the actions of others to guide our own behavior, especially in moments of uncertainty. Now, when it comes to business, the unfortunate reality is that most products and services are used in private. So the idea here is to look for ways to generate public signals for private choices, actions, opinions, and even purchases that benefit your business. Does your product advertise itself by being used in public? Is it easy for people to see the popularity of what you offer? Can customers easily demonstrate support for your brand? Apple's original iPod shipped with white earbuds at a time when other music players included black ones. Lululemon checkout bags were designed to advertise the brand well after an initial purchase. And Livestrong wristbands helped advertise public support for a cause that might otherwise have been largely invisible. So, what can you do to make your products or services more visible to the public? Next up, we have practical value. This is one of the easiest of the 6 principles to apply because almost every product has something useful about it, and people like to share practical or useful information. And not just for the benefit of social currency, which is more about making the sender look good, but also just to help someone out. It's a way to let friends know that we care, and it causes everyone involved to feel a little more connected. When it comes to applying this principle to your business, ask yourself questions like, what are the practical benefits of your product? How can it save people time or money? How can it improve or enhance their lives? Again, almost every product has something useful about it. So get clear on what you offer and then highlight those benefits so people can understand and share them more easily. Last but not least is stories. People do not think in terms of facts, they think in terms of stories because narratives are much more engaging and memorable than facts alone. And while people tend to focus on the story itself, information, ideas, and sometimes brands come along for the ride. One powerful benefit to using stories is they make it easy for people to talk about products or ideas without coming across like a salesperson or an advertisement. Nobody wants to sound like they're selling something, but they do want to share interesting stories. And as Jonah Berger explains in the book, it's difficult for people to disagree with someone's personal experience. They're often so engaged in the narrative that they're less likely to question the story or its underlying message. Now, the one drawback to stories is that they tend to evolve and change with each retelling, and minor details tend to get lost in this process. So businesses that want to take advantage of this principle need to craft stories in which the product or service is deeply woven into the narrative. That way, the story can't be retold without mentioning it. Now, zooming back out to all 6 principles, there are no hard and fast rules about how to incorporate them. You can increase word of mouth by only incorporating one, but of course, you have the option to combine several of them together for an increased impact. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make it easier for people to understand, remember, and share your brand with others. I like to think of this as enabling chance or creating luck. While you cannot control individual outcomes, these 6 principles can increase the odds that your message will naturally spread by word of mouth. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, I encourage you to check out Contagious by Jonah Berger. It covers far more detail and includes many practical examples of how you can apply each of the 6 principles within your business. Anyway, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one, as we'll be covering the top 3 reasons why businesses stop growing and how to avoid or overcome them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to get an alert when new videos are available. And if you'd like a PDF cheat sheet with all 21 marketing tips, visit 21marketingtips.com or click the link in the video description box. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.